My name is Heather Reynolds, and at 32 years old, I never expected to still be fighting for a place at the family table. When I saw pictures of my golden child brother Kyle proposing to Stephanie on Facebook, I called home excited about the engagement party. Dad brushed me off with, "It is just a reunion, Heather. Nothing special." 2 days later, I posted a carefree ski selfie. I had no idea the avalanche it would trigger in my family. Before I get into this wild story, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from and if you have ever felt left out by family. Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned to hear how one innocent photo blew up my entire family dynamic. Growing up in Fairfield, Connecticut meant pristine lawns, country club memberships, and very specific expectations. Our Tudor-style home on Maple Avenue was the envy of many, with its perfectly manicured gardens that my mother Diane tended to with the same precision she applied to managing our family image. My father Harold, a senior partner at his law firm, believed appearances were everything. From the outside, we were the picture-perfect American family. But inside those brick walls, things were much more complicated. I was the firstborn, and for 7 years, I had my parents all to myself. I remember those early years fondly, my father teaching me to ride a bike, my mother reading bedtime stories. But everything changed when Kyle was born. It was subtle at first, the shift in attention. By the time he was walking and talking, the transformation was complete. Kyle became the sun around which our family orbited. He was exceptionally gifted, both athletically and academically. By age 10, he was winning regional tennis tournaments. By 14, he was taking advanced placement classes and being scouted by prestigious high schools. My parents never missed a single game or academic decathlon. Meanwhile, I was decent at art, but not exceptional at anything that mattered in our achievement-oriented household. "Heather, why can you not be more focused like your brother?" My mother would ask after seeing my report card with mostly B's. "Kyle never brings home anything less than an A." "Your brother is going to get a full scholarship to an Ivy League school," my father would boast at neighborhood barbecues while I stood awkwardly beside him, invisible. The pattern continued through high school. Kyle was class president, valedictorian, and state tennis champion. I was just average, dabbling in photography for the yearbook committee and hanging out with the drama kids. When college application season arrived, my parents had mapped out Kyle's entire future, despite him being only 11 years old at the time. "We have had your path planned since you were born," my father told me over dinner. "You will go to Georgetown for pre-law, then Harvard Law like me. The firm will be waiting." The disappointment on their faces when I announced my plans to attend Rhode Island School of Design for photography was something I will never forget. My mother actually cried. My father did not speak to me for 2 weeks. "You are throwing your life away on a hobby," he finally said, when he deigned to acknowledge me again. "No one makes a living taking pictures." Despite their disapproval, I went. Those 4 years were transformative not just for my art, but for my sense of self. I found friends who valued creativity and authenticity over achievement and appearances. I discovered who I was outside the shadow of my perfect brother. And I fell in love with landscape photography, capturing the raw beauty of nature in ways that moved people. After graduation, while my classmates flocked to New York and Los Angeles, I headed west to Boulder, Colorado. The mountains called to me in a way the manicured lawns of Connecticut never had. I found work with a small but respected outdoor magazine photographing extreme sports and wilderness landscapes. I built a life I loved, surrounded by friends who accepted me exactly as I was. Contact with my family dwindled over the years. Holiday visits became phone calls became emails, and eventually just the occasional text message. Kyle went to Princeton as expected then, Harvard Business School. He joined a prestigious consulting firm in Boston and continued to be the pride and joy of the Reynolds family. Last year, feeling more secure in my own life and career achievements, I decided to try reconnecting with my family. I had built a solid reputation in outdoor photography with my work appearing in national publications. I had even published a coffee table book of alpine landscapes that had sold surprisingly well. I thought perhaps now, with some success under my belt, my parents might finally see value in the path I had chosen. The reconnection attempts were awkward but not disastrous. I called more regularly. I sent birthday and holiday gifts. I even flew home for Thanksgiving, where the conversation was stilted but civil. My mother seemed slightly more interested in my life, asking about my recent assignment photographing winter sports for a major athletic brand campaign. My father still introduced me as Heather, our daughter, who lives in Colorado, as if my career did not merit mention, but at least he was not openly disapproving. Kyle and I had a stilted relationship. Neither close nor openly hostile, we occupied the strange middle ground of siblings who had grown up in the same house but experienced entirely different childhoods. During that Thanksgiving visit, he seemed preoccupied, checking his phone constantly, and disappearing for long work calls. The mystery was solved 2 weeks later when my Facebook feed showed Kyle down on one knee in front of his girlfriend Stephanie, a willowy blonde from a family similar to ours, with a massive diamond ring. The announcement had hundreds of likes and comments, including gushing congratulations from my parents about welcoming Stephanie to the family. I was genuinely happy for them. Stephanie had always been kind to me during the few times we had met, asking thoughtful questions about my photography and seeming sincerely interested in my life in Colorado. I immediately sent a congratulatory text to Kyle and began looking at flights for what would surely be an elaborate engagement party. After all, this was the golden child getting engaged. No expense would be spared. I was excited at the prospect of further reconnecting with my family during this happy time. Perhaps sharing in Kyle's joy would help bridge the remaining gaps between us all. I started browsing online for the perfect gift and even considered offering my photography services for their engagement photos. It seemed like the perfect opportunity to show my support while also demonstrating my professional success. As I scrolled through flight options, I felt a flutter of optimism I had not experienced regarding my family in years. This engagement might be exactly the fresh start we all needed. 3 weeks after Kyle's proposal announcement, I still had not received any details about the engagement celebration. Knowing my mother's penchant for formal invitations, I decided to call rather than wait any longer. I caught her on a Tuesday afternoon, presumably in the middle of her garden club preparations. "Mom, hi, it is Heather," I said, trying to keep my tone light and casual. "Heather, what a surprise. Is everything all right?" There was that familiar note of concern, as if I only called when something was wrong. "Everything is great," I assured her. "I was just wondering about Kyle and Stephanie's engagement party. I need to request time off work and book flights, so I wanted to get the details." The silence that followed lasted just a beat too long. "Oh," my mother finally said, her voice taking on that high, strained quality it got when she was uncomfortable. "Well, about that." My stomach dropped before she even continued. "The party is this weekend, dear. I thought Kyle would have mentioned it to you." "This weekend," I repeated, calculating quickly. "That is in 4 days. Why am I just hearing about this now?" Another uncomfortable pause. "Well, Heather, the thing is, it is really just a small gathering, mostly local friends and family." "I am family," I said, stating the obvious. "I can still make it if I book a flight today. Is it at your house or a venue?" "It is at the house, but..." "Heather," my mother's voice dropped to almost a whisper, "you were not actually invited." The words hit me like a physical blow. Not invited to my own brother's engagement party. "I do not understand," I managed to say through the tightness in my throat. "Kyle and Stephanie wanted to keep it intimate," my mother explained, though her explanation felt rehearsed. "Just close family and friends." "And I am not close family." The hurt in my voice was unmistakable now. "Of course you are, dear, but you live so far away and it was all planned rather quickly." Kyle did not think you would want to fly all the way here for just one evening. I gripped my phone tighter. He could have asked me, instead of deciding for me. Who else is coming to this intimate gathering? My mother hesitated again. Well, your father's partners from the firm, my garden club friends, Kyle's college roommates, Stephanie's extended family from Philadelphia. With each group, she listed the knife twisted deeper. This was not a small, intimate gathering. This was a significant celebration to which distant acquaintances were invited, while I, the sister of the groom-to-be, was deliberately excluded. Let me talk to Dad, I said, cutting her off. He is in meetings all day, Heather. Mom put him on the phone. I know he is home on Tuesdays. After some rustling and muffled conversation, my father's authoritative voice came through. Heather, what is this about? I am very busy. Why was I not invited to Kyle's engagement party? I asked directly. Your mother explained the situation, he replied dismissively. It is just a reunion of close friends and family. Nothing special. A reunion that includes your law partners, but not your daughter? Do not be dramatic, Heather. This is exactly why these events are difficult with you present. You always make everything about yourself. I was momentarily stunned into silence. Was that how they saw me? The dramatic one who made everything about herself? The house will be full, he continued. All the guest rooms are already assigned to Stephanie's family. There would not even be a place for you to stay. I could get a hotel, I countered. Honestly, Heather, it is just not practical. We will include you in the wedding planning, of course. Of course, I echoed hollowly. After a few more minutes of circular conversation, I ended the call feeling numb. I sat on my couch, staring at the wall of my apartment, trying to process what had just happened. Not only was I excluded from this significant family event, but my father had dismissed it as just a reunion, as if that somehow made the exclusion less hurtful. The more I thought about it, the more details came into focus, making the situation even more painful. The party was being held at my childhood home, the place where I had grown up, yet I was not welcome there. People who had no blood relation to Kyle were invited, while I, his only sibling, was not, and the decision had been made without even consulting me about whether I would want to attend. When my roommate, Brooke, came home from her nursing shift, she found me still on the couch, now surrounded by crumpled tissues. Whoa, what happened? She asked, dropping her bags and sitting beside me. Through hiccuping sobs, I explained the situation. Brooke, who had heard plenty about my family dynamics over our 3 years of living together, was appropriately outraged. That is completely messed up, Heather. They cannot treat you like this. Apparently they can, I said, blowing my nose. So, what are you going to do, crash the party? I shook my head. And prove my father right about me being dramatic? No thanks. Then what? Nothing, I said with a sigh. What can I do? Brooke gave me a long look. You can refuse to let them ruin your weekend. We have that ski trip planned with Jason and the group, remember? Perfect powder forecasted at Breckenridge. Instead of sitting here feeling sorry for yourself, come shred some snow and have actual fun with people who value you. The ski trip. I had almost forgotten. Our friend group had been planning this weekend getaway for months, taking advantage of early spring conditions in the mountains. I do not know if I am in the mood, I admitted. All the more reason to go, Brooke insisted. Nature therapy, friend therapy, speed therapy, the triple threat cure for family drama. As I considered her suggestion, memories of other exclusions floated up from the recesses of my mind. The time my parents attended Kyle's science fair, but skipped my art show, scheduled the same evening. The family vacation to Europe planned during my final exams, so I unfortunately could not join. The graduation dinner, where all the conversation centered around Kyle's middle school achievements, rather than my college degree being conferred that very day. This was just one more in a long pattern. The realization did not lessen the sting. but it helped me see more clearly. I had spent too many years seeking approval and inclusion from people who had repeatedly shown me I was an afterthought in their lives. You know what? You are right, I told Brooke, straightening my shoulders. I am not going to let this ruin my weekend. The Reynolds family can have their perfect little party without the black sheep present to embarrass them. I will be too busy living my actual life to care. Brooke grinned and held up her hand for a high five. That is the spirit. Now go wash your face and help me plan our après-ski outfits. As I headed to the bathroom, I felt a mixture of emotions swirling within me. Hurt and anger certainly, but also a growing determination. If my family did not have space for me at their table, I would build my own table surrounded by people who actually wanted me there. Friday morning dawned clear and crisp, with the kind of brilliant blue Colorado sky that still took my breath away, even after 8 years of living beneath it. Brooke, Jason, and I loaded up Jason's SUV with our gear while our other friends Marina and Pete followed in their car. The excitement of the upcoming ski weekend was a welcome distraction from the knot of emotion still sitting in my chest. The drive to Breckenridge was filled with sing-alongs to 90s rock songs and debates about which runs we would hit first. Marina, an emergency room doctor with precious little time off, was advocating for the most challenging terrain. I need to feel alive before going back to the hospital Monday, she insisted. Give me the double black diamonds or give me death. How about neither death nor double blacks to start, Pete countered. Some of us are mere mortals who need to warm up first. The easy banter among friends was soothing. These people knew me, the real me, not some role I was expected to play in a family drama. They valued my photography skills, laughed at my dry humor, and never made me feel like I was taking up space that was not rightfully mine. We arrived at the mountain just as the morning rush was thinning out. The conditions were exactly as promised, with 8 inches of fresh powder from an overnight storm and visibility for miles. As we geared up at the base, I felt the familiar anticipation that came before a good ski day, my body already remembering the rhythm of carving turns down a perfect slope. Ready to show these amateurs how it is done, Jason joked, adjusting his goggles. A former competitive skier, he was by far the most skilled in our group. Just try to keep up. I shot back with a grin clicking into my bindings. For the first few runs, I was conscious of making an effort to have fun, pushing aside thoughts of the engagement party that would be happening the next day without me. But gradually, the physical exertion and stunning beauty of the mountain worked their magic. My turns became more fluid, my breathing synchronized with the swoosh of my skis through powder. By our third trip down a challenging tree run, I was fully present, focused only on finding the best line through the glades. We stopped for lunch at a mid-mountain lodge, faces flushed and spirits high. Peeling off layers in the warmth of the rustic interior, we compared notes on the morning's runs. Heather, you were absolutely shredding that last section, Marina commented, unwrapping her sandwich. I could barely keep you in sight. Nothing like flying down a mountain to clear your head, I replied. Speaking of, Brooke said cautiously, how are you feeling about, I considered the question honestly. Better than I expected. Being here helps put things in perspective. Their loss, right? Absolutely their loss. Jason agreed, raising his hot chocolate in a toast. To chosen family. To chosen family, we all echoed, clinking our various drinks together. After lunch, we headed for the highest peaks, where the powder was still relatively untouched. The afternoon sun cast a golden glow across the vast white landscape, turning ordinary scenes into breathtaking vistas that had me itching for my camera. At the top of the Imperial Express, the highest chairlift in North America, we paused to take in the panoramic view of the 10-mile range stretching out before us. This is insane, Pete breathed, turning in a slow circle. I feel like I am on top of the world. We pretty much are, I replied, pulling out my phone. This light is incredible. Group photo. After capturing a few shots of the whole gang, I stepped away to frame a solo shot with the sweeping mountain range behind me. The timing was perfect. A shaft of sunlight broke through the clouds, illuminating the snowy peaks with an almost supernatural glow. I angled my phone to catch both my face and the majestic backdrop, the joy of the moment evident in my genuine smile. Looking at the resulting image, I felt a surge of something powerful. Here I was living a life I had chosen, surrounded by friends who genuinely cared for me in one of the most beautiful places on earth. While my family was gathered in Connecticut, playing their roles in the ongoing performance of the perfect Reynolds family, I was authentically happy in a way that had nothing to do with meeting someone else's expectations. The contrast was so stark it was almost funny. Without overthinking it, I opened Instagram and uploaded the photo with the caption, "Living my best life while missing family reunions, tower number, Colorado life, number, power day number, choosing joy." Subtlebrook commented, reading over my shoulder with a smirk. "I thought so," I replied lightly. "Ready to drop in?" Within minutes, likes and supportive comments began rolling in from friends and followers. My college roommate wrote, "Their loss queen." My colleague from the magazine commented, "This light is everything." Various friends added fire emojis and heart reactions. I silenced my phone and slid it back into my pocket. Whatever ripples the post might cause in Connecticut, I was not going to let them distract me from the perfect ski day unfolding in front of me. Pushing off from the ridge, I dropped into a steep bowl of untouched powder, the exhilaration of the descent washing away any remaining thoughts of family drama. For the rest of the afternoon, we chased the sun across the mountain, finding pockets of perfect snow and challenging ourselves on increasingly difficult terrain. By the time the lifts closed at 4 o'clock, my legs were burning pleasantly and my mind was clear. The physical exhaustion and natural beauty had worked together to restore my perspective. As we gathered our gear and headed for the Ypres ski bar, I realized I had not checked my phone in hours. The thought of the engagement party happening the next day still stung, but the sharp edge of hurt had dulled somewhat. I had chosen joy today, actively and deliberately. That felt like a small victory. "First round is on me," I announced as we claimed a table on the crowded deck of a popular slope-side bar, for being the best ski crew and support system a girl could ask for. "I will drink to that," Marina agreed, but first a toast to Heather, who showed us all how to handle family drama with grace and killer ski skills. As my friends raised their glasses and the golden afternoon light bathed us all in its warm glow, I felt something settle inside me. I might not have a place at my family's table right now, but I had built a life filled with people who chose to include me. Today that felt like more than enough. Sunday morning brought a rude awakening. After a full day on the slopes, followed by dinner and drinks in town, I had fallen into bed at our rented condo and slept the deep, dreamless sleep of the physically exhausted. When I finally surfaced around 9:30, I reached for my phone to check the weather forecast for our final day of skiing. What I found instead was digital chaos. 27 missed calls, 43 text messages, dozens of Instagram notifications, multiple voicemails. "What the hell?" I muttered, scrolling through the notifications with increasing disbelief. The first voicemail was from my mother, her voice tight with barely controlled fury. "Heather Elizabeth Reynolds, call me back immediately. Your little social media stunt has completely disrupted Kyle's special day. How could you be so selfish?" Stunt selfish, all I had done was post a ski photo. The second voicemail was from my father, his tone clipped and businesslike. "Heather, this behavior is completely unacceptable. I expect you to remove that inappropriate post and issue an apology to your brother and Stephanie immediately. Call me back." The third was from Kyle himself. "Hey sis," he began, sounding tired. "Can you please call me when you get this? We need to talk about what happened." Bewildered, I switched to text messages. They ranged from my mother's multiple variations of, Call me now to more revealing messages from extended family members. My cousin Natalie, hey, why aren't you at Kyle's party? Everyone's asking about you. My Aunt Patricia, Heather, honey, we missed you yesterday. Is everything okay? Your mom gave some vague excuse about you being too busy to come. My Uncle George, kid, whatever's going on with you and your parents, you should know we all asked about you. Seemed weird you weren't there for your brother's big day. As I pieced together what had happened, a clearer picture emerged. My innocent ski photo had unintentionally exposed the fact that I wasn't at the engagement party. Apparently, many of the guests had assumed I would be there and started asking questions when I wasn't. My parents' excuses hadn't been very convincing, especially in light of my very public documentation that I was simply enjoying a ski weekend rather than attending to some unmissable obligation. Brooke wandered in from the kitchen, coffee mug in hand. Morning sunshine, ready for one more. Whoa, what's with the face? Apparently, I've ruined my brother's engagement party, I said, still scrolling through messages in disbelief. By skiing, that's a new one. I quickly explained the situation as I understood it, showing her some of the more revealing messages. Oh my God, Brooke said, eyes widening. Your parents told everyone you were too busy to come, not that you weren't invited. Your post totally exposed their lie. I didn't do it on purpose, I protested. Of course not. But they're more upset about looking bad than about hurting you in the first place. She sat beside me on the bed. Classic narcissist move. My phone rang again, my mother's name flashing on the screen. With a deep breath, I answered. Hello? Finally, my mother snapped. Do you have any idea what you've done? Mom, I posted a ski photo. I didn't mention anything about Kyle's party. You knew exactly what you were doing with that caption about missing family reunions, she accused. Stephanie's parents were mortified when they realized Kyle's only sister wasn't included. They kept asking if there was some family rift they should know about before the wedding. The irony of the situation would have been laughable if it wasn't so painful. My family was upset not because they had hurt me by excluding me, but because my absence had been noticed and questioned, disrupting the perfect image they wanted to project. I'm sorry if my post caused confusion, I said carefully, but I'm not the one who decided not to invite immediate family to an engagement party. We've been over this, Heather. It was a small gathering. That included Dad's law partners, but not his daughter. I understand. My mother sighed heavily. Your father wants to speak with you. Before I could protest, my father's voice came on the line. Heather, I'm extremely disappointed in your behavior. You need to take down that post immediately and issue an apology. For what exactly? Skiing, while uninvited to a family event? For deliberately causing a scene and embarrassing the family? I didn't cause a scene, Dad. I wasn't even there to cause a scene. That was the point. Don't be clever, he snapped. This is exactly why Kyle was concerned about inviting you. He was worried you'd make his engagement about your issues. The casual cruelty of the statement took my breath away. So Kyle did decide not to invite me. It wasn't an oversight. My father's momentary silence confirmed what I'd suspected. This hadn't been about practical considerations like last-minute planning or my distance from Connecticut. My brother had deliberately excluded me, and my parents had supported that decision. Kyle and Stephanie wanted a drama-free celebration, my father finally said. And I'm drama? Is that how you all see me? Your current behavior isn't exactly disproving that assessment. I ended the call shortly after feeling hollowed out. Within minutes, my phone pinged with a text from Kyle. Way to make my engagement about you as usual. Stephanie's upset, Mom's upset, and I'm disappointed but not surprised. You couldn't just let me have one day, could you? As I stared at my brother's words, trying to formulate a response that wouldn't escalate the situation further, another text came in, this one from Stephanie herself. Heather, I want you to know, I asked Kyle multiple times to invite you. This wasn't my decision. I'm sorry things happened this way. The contrast between the two messages was jarring. Stephanie, who barely knew me, had advocated for my inclusion, while my own brother had chosen to exclude me and was now blaming me for the consequences of that decision. By this time, Jason, Marina, and Pete had joined Brooke and me in the bedroom, all watching with concerned expressions as I tried to navigate this unexpected family crisis. "So let me get this straight," Marina said after I explained the situation. "They didn't invite you, lied to everyone about why you weren't there, and are now mad at you for existing visibly elsewhere." "That about sums it up," I confirmed. "That's some toxic family dynamics right there," Pete said, shaking his head. "What are you going to do?" Jason asked. I looked down at my phone at the dozens of notifications still streaming in, at the accusations and explanations and expressions of concern from various family members. The ski day we had planned suddenly seemed impossible. This situation needed to be addressed. "I think I need to have an honest conversation with my brother," I said finally. "This has been building for years, and maybe it's time to clear the air." "Do you want us to head back to Boulder?" Brooke asked. "We can cut the trip short." I considered the offer, touched by my friends' willingness to change their plans to support me. "No, you guys stay and enjoy the last day. I'll catch a ride back with the shuttle service. I need some time alone to think anyway." As my friends reluctantly prepared for their day on the slopes without me, I packed my gear and booked a seat on the shuttle back to Boulder. Before leaving, I checked my social media again, considering whether to delete the post that had inadvertently caused such chaos. In the end, I left it up. It was an honest representation of my weekend, not some calculated move to embarrass my family. The fact that they were more concerned about how my absence looked to others than about how their exclusion felt to me told me everything I needed to know about our relationship. The shuttle ride back to Boulder gave me 3 hours of mountain scenery and much-needed time to process. As I watched the stunning landscape roll by, I reflected on the bizarre situation. Somehow, by simply enjoying my life and documenting it honestly, I had exposed a family dynamic that had been carefully hidden for years. I was the outsider, the one who didn't fit the carefully curated Reynolds family image. It hurt deeply, but there was also something oddly freeing about having it all out in the open. No more pretending we were just a normal family, with normal disagreements. The truth was messier, but at least it was the truth. By the time I reached my apartment, I had decided on my next move. It was time for an honest conversation with Kyle, one that went beyond the surface-level pleasantries we'd maintained for years. Whether it healed the rift between us or widened it permanently, at least, we would both know where we stood. Back in my apartment, I shed my ski clothes and took a long, hot shower, trying to wash away the tension of the morning. Afterward, wrapped in my softest robe with a mug of strong coffee, I sat cross-legged on my bed and dialed Kyle's number. He answered on the second ring. Finally, he said by way of greeting. "Hello to you too," I replied, working to keep my tone neutral. "I think we need to talk." "You think?" His voice dripped with sarcasm. "Stephanie's parents are questioning whether they want their daughter joining such a divided family. Do you have any idea how embarrassing yesterday was?" "Actually, I do know something about family embarrassment," I said quietly. "I've had plenty of experience being the Reynolds family disappointment." "Oh, here we go with the victim routine." I took a deep breath, determined not to get pulled into the familiar pattern of defensiveness and accusation. "Kyle, I'm not calling to fight. I genuinely want to understand why you didn't want me at your engagement party. No excuses about logistics or last-minute planning. The real reason." The line went quiet for a moment. When Kyle spoke again, his voice had lost some of its edge. "You really don't know." "I really don't. I thought we were in an okay place. I was genuinely happy about your engagement. I sent you a congratulatory text right away." Another pause. "It's complicated, Heather. I've got time." Kyle sighed heavily. "Do you remember Thanksgiving 3 years ago?" I cast my mind back. Vaguely. I flew home. We had dinner. It was awkward but civil. What about it? You got into that argument with Dad about my promotion. The memory came into sharper focus. My father had spent nearly the entire dinner praising Kyle's recent promotion at his consulting firm, complete with toasts and congratulatory speeches. When I'd mentioned my own recent achievement, having my photography featured in National Geographic, my father had dismissed it as a nice little hobby success. I'd finally snapped, calling out the blatant favoritism. That wasn't an argument, Kyle. That was me finally standing up for myself after decades of being treated like I don't matter. Well, it made everyone uncomfortable, Kyle said. Mom cried after you left? Because I pointed out that they've always favored you. That's not exactly a shocking revelation. See, this is exactly the problem. Kyle's voice rose slightly. You're always painting yourself as the victim and the rest of us as the villains. Do you have any idea what it's like being the golden child, as you call me? Do you know how much pressure I've lived with my entire life? The question caught me off guard. What are you talking about? You've always thrived under pressure. You were a star at everything you tried. Because I didn't have a choice. The sudden vehemence in his voice startled me. From the time I was in elementary school, I knew exactly what was expected of me. Perfect grades, athletic achievements, the right college, the right career. There was never a moment when I could just be average, or make a mistake, or choose my own path. I sat in stunned silence as Kyle continued, words pouring out as if a dam had broken. You think you had it hard because Mom and Dad didn't come to your art shows. Try having them at every game, every competition, with their expectations crushing you. Do you know how many nights I threw up from anxiety before tests? How many panic attacks I had in college trying to maintain my GPA? Meanwhile, you just left. You chose your own path and didn't care what anyone thought. Do you have any idea how much I've envied that freedom? The perspective shift was dizzying. All these years, I'd seen Kyle as the favored one, the golden child who had everything handed to him, who never had to fight for approval or recognition. I had never considered that the spotlight I so desperately wanted might have felt like a prison to him. I had no idea, I said softly. You always seemed so confident, so perfect at everything. I thought you loved being the star of the family. I learned to play the part, Kyle replied, his voice calmer now. It was easier than disappointing them. But watching you build your own life on your own terms, sometimes I wished I had your courage. Courage, I repeated incredulously. Kyle, I've spent my entire adult life feeling like the family failure. You're not, though. You're successful doing what you love. Do you know how rare that is? We both fell silent for a moment, absorbing this radical reframing of our shared history. So what does this have to do with not inviting me to your engagement party? I finally asked. Kyle sighed again. After that Thanksgiving, Mom and Dad painted you as this unpredictable element that might cause a scene at any moment. When we were planning the party, they suggested it might be easier for everyone if you weren't there. I didn't push back hard enough. And Stephanie, she texted me saying she wanted me there. She did, Kyle admitted. Multiple times. She was pretty upset when she found out you weren't invited. She even threatened to call you herself. But I convinced her it would just make things more complicated. So, you all decided for me that I was too dramatic to handle a family event. I summarized, the hurt evident in my voice, despite my efforts to remain calm. It wasn't just that, Kyle said hesitantly. Part of me was, I don't know, afraid. Afraid of what? Afraid of you showing up with your cool Colorado friends and your interesting life and your actual passion for what you do. Afraid of Stephanie seeing that there are other ways to live than the path I'm on, the path her family expects too. His voice dropped almost to a whisper. Afraid of facing the choices I've made. The raw honesty in his voice made my throat tighten. For the first time, I was seeing my brother not as the golden child or the favored son, but as a person trapped in a role that had been assigned to him before he was old enough to choose for himself. "Kyle," I said gently, "are you happy with your job, with your life choices?" A long pause. Sometimes, mostly, it's complicated. "And Stephanie, do you love her?" "Yes," he answered without hesitation. "That's the one thing in my life I'm sure about. She understands me in ways no one else ever has." "Then I'm happy for you truly. And I'm sorry about the ski photo. I wasn't trying to cause problems." "I know," he conceded. "I overreacted. It's just, when Stephanie's mom started asking why you weren't there, and then her dad got that look like he was reevaluating their whole opinion of our family, I panicked." "I get it," I said, though part of me was still hurt. "Family image is everything." "It shouldn't be, though, should it?" Kyle said quietly. "That's what Stephanie keeps telling me." "She sounds pretty wise." "She is. She also really wants to get to know you better. She thinks you're refreshingly authentic, whatever that means." Despite everything, I found myself smiling slightly. I'd like to know her better too. We talked for almost 2 hours, venturing into territory we had never explored before. Kyle shared the crushing anxiety he had experienced throughout college, and his early career, the panic attacks he had hidden from everyone, the doubts he still harbored about whether he was living his own life or the one our parents had, scripted for him. I shared the loneliness of being the family outsider, the years of feeling inadequate, the struggle to build self-worth when the people who should value you most clearly don't. The conversation didn't solve everything. There were moments of tension, old patterns reasserting themselves, defensive responses triggered by years of established dynamics. But, for perhaps the first time in our adult lives, we were seeing each other clearly, not through the distorted lens of family roles and parental expectations. When we finally ended the call, nothing was resolved in practical terms. The engagement party had still happened without me. The family was still in turmoil over the exposed deception, but something fundamental had shifted between Kyle and me. A wall had been breached, allowing for the possibility of a more honest relationship moving forward. After hanging up, I sat for a long time staring out my window at the mountains in the distance. Family dynamics, I reflected, were like those mountains. What looked solid and unchangeable from a distance was actually the result of immense pressures beneath the surface, invisible forces pushing and pulling to create the visible landscape. And like mountains, what took years to form couldn't be reshaped in a single conversation, no matter how revelatory. But it was a start. 3 days after my conversation with Kyle, an email arrived in my inbox with the subject line, "Family discussion, important." The sender was my father, and the formal tone of the message was so characteristic of him that I might have smiled if the situation hadn't been so tense. "Heather," it began, "recent events have made it clear that a family discussion is necessary to address ongoing concerns and establish a path forward. Your mother, Kyle, Stephanie, and I would like to arrange a video conference call this Saturday at 2:00 p.m. EST 12:00 p.m. your time. Please confirm your availability. Regards, Dad." No apology, no acknowledgement of my feelings, just a businesslike summons as if I were being called into a meeting with a difficult client. Classic Harold Reynolds. I confirmed my availability, then spent the next few days preparing mentally for the conversation. This would be the first time all of us, including Stephanie, would be discussing the situation together. I wanted to be clear and honest about my feelings, without letting the discussion devolve into the kind of emotional chaos that would only reinforce my family's image of me as the dramatic one. On Friday night, I sat at my small desk with a notebook writing down the key points I wanted to make. Brooke found me there, surrounded by crumpled paper and half-empty tea mugs. "Preparing for battle?" she asked, leaning against the doorframe. "Something like that," I admitted. I keep starting over because everything I write sounds either too confrontational or too conciliatory. What's your goal for this call? I considered the question. I want them to understand how their actions affected me, but I also want to move forward somehow. I don't want to burn bridges, but I can't keep pretending everything's fine when it's not. Then say that Brooke suggested. Be honest about both parts, the hurt and the hope. I nodded, adding her advice to my notes. I just don't want to fall into the old patterns. It's so easy to slip back into the role they've assigned me. So, don't, Brooke said simply. You're not the same person you were when those patterns formed. You've built a life you love surrounded by people who value you for who you really are. Speak from that place of strength. Her words stayed with me as I finalized my notes and tried to get some sleep. By Saturday morning, I felt as prepared as I could be. I set up my laptop in the living room, choosing a neutral background that wouldn't distract from the conversation. At precisely noon my time, I clicked the link my father had sent. The screen filled with the familiar faces of my family, all seated in the formal living room of my parents' house. My father occupied his usual leather armchair, looking stern in a button-down shirt despite it being the weekend. My mother perched beside him on the arm of the chair, her posture rigid, her face carefully composed. Kyle and Stephanie sat close together on the sofa across from my parents, both looking uncomfortable. Heather, my father began without preamble. Thank you for joining us. I think we all agree that recent events have created an unfortunate situation that needs to be addressed. Yes, I agreed calmly. I think there's a lot we need to discuss. Let me start by saying that while your social media post was inappropriate, we acknowledge that there was a communication failure regarding Kyle's engagement celebration, my father continued in his lawyer voice. Going forward, we need to establish better protocols for family events. I bit back the first retort that came to mind, reminding myself of my goals for the conversation. Before we talk about protocols, I'd like to address the fact that I was deliberately excluded from my brother's engagement party, and no one had the courtesy to be honest with me about it. Heather, my mother interjected, her voice taking on the placating tone she always used when trying to smooth over conflicts. We never meant to hurt your feelings. It was simply a matter of practical considerations. Mom, I said gently but firmly, that's not true, and we all know it. Kyle and I have already had an honest conversation about this. I wasn't invited because you all decided I might cause a scene or embarrass the family somehow. My father shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Your history of emotional outbursts at family gatherings was a consideration, yes. My history of emotional outbursts, I repeated incredulously. You mean the handful of times over the past decade when I've dared to express hurt feelings about being constantly sidelined in this family? This is exactly the kind of dramatic reaction we wanted to avoid, my father said, gesturing toward the screen as if my calm questioning proved his point. Harold Stephanie spoke up unexpectedly. I don't think Heather is being dramatic. She's expressing legitimate feelings about being excluded from our engagement celebration. A brief, awkward silence followed this intervention. My father clearly hadn't expected Stephanie to contradict him, and neither had I. She sat up straighter on the sofa, her expression determined. I want to say something, she continued. I've been watching this family dynamic as an outsider, and I have to tell you it's concerning. From the moment Kyle and I got engaged, I pushed for Heather to be included in our celebration. I was consistently told that she was too far away, that she wouldn't want to come for just one evening, that it was impractical. I accepted those explanations because I didn't know better. But now I see that wasn't the real reason, and I feel like I was misled. Kyle placed his hand on Stephanie's arm, but whether in support or restraint wasn't clear. Steph. No, Kyle, they need to hear this, she insisted. What kind of family excludes a member from important events and then gets angry when that exclusion becomes known? That's not healthy. And it's not the kind of family dynamic I want to bring children into someday. My mother's face had gone pale. Stephanie, dear, I think you're misunderstanding the situation. We're a very close family, but Heather has chosen to live her life apart from us. That's not fair, I said, my voice steady despite the emotion building in my chest. I moved to Colorado to pursue my career, not to escape my family. I've made countless efforts over the years to maintain connections, but it's hard when every interaction leaves me feeling like an outsider in my own family. You've always been overly sensitive, my father dismissed. No, Dad, I haven't. I countered, drawing on the strength I'd built in my life away from them. What I've been is consistently treated as less important, less valued, and less welcome than Kyle. That's not sensitivity, that's a reasonable response to years of differential treatment. We've always supported both our children equally, my father insisted. Harold, my mother said softly, surprising everyone. That's not entirely true. All eyes turned to her. She smoothed her already perfect hair, a nervous gesture I remembered from childhood. We've always had different expectations for Heather and Kyle, she admitted. Different standards, different levels of interest in their chosen paths. I can see how that might have felt unequal. My father looked at my mother as if she'd suddenly started speaking in tongues. Diane, what are you saying? I'm saying that perhaps we should listen to what Heather is telling us, my mother replied, her voice gaining strength. If she says she's felt excluded and undervalued, maybe we should consider that there's some truth to that. The admission, however, tentative, was so unexpected that for a moment I couldn't find words to respond. My mother had never before acknowledged, even indirectly, the favoritism that had shaped our family dynamic. Kyle broke the silence. I've been thinking a lot about our conversation earlier this week, Heather, about the roles we've both been stuck in. I don't want that for us going forward. I want my kids someday to have a relationship with their Aunt Heather. I want them to know the cool, creative person you are, not some family myth about the difficult relative no one talks about. I want that too, I said softly. Then, what do you suggest? My father asked, his tone suggesting he was humoring us rather than genuinely seeking input. I took a deep breath. I suggest we start by being honest with each other. No more pretending everything's fine when it's not. No more excluding family members and then lying about why they're not present. No more dismissing legitimate feelings as drama or oversensitivity. And in practical terms, my father pressed. In practical terms, I'd like to be included in wedding planning discussions if Kyle and Stephanie want me to be. I'd like regular family calls that aren't just crisis management. And I'd like acknowledgement when I share successes in my life the same way Kyle's achievements are celebrated. My father looked like he wanted to argue, but my mother placed a restraining hand on his arm. Those seem like reasonable requests, Harold. Stephanie nodded enthusiastically. I'd love to have your input on the wedding, Heather, especially with your eye for photography and aesthetics. Kyle managed a small smile. Maybe you could even help us choose a photographer who won't make us pose for those awful, stiff, formal shots Mom loves. I heard that, my mother said, but there was a hint of humor in her voice. The tension in the virtual room had eased slightly, but I knew better than to expect too much too soon. Decades of established patterns wouldn't dissolve in a single conversation. My father still looked uncomfortable with the direction the discussion had taken, clearly unhappy about losing control of the narrative. But he wasn't shutting it down either, which represented progress of a sort. I think we've made a good start today, I said, deciding to end on a positive note, rather than push for more than could be achieved in one call. I appreciate everyone being willing to have this conversation. We'll be sending out details about the wedding soon, Stephanie added. It would mean a lot to both of us if you could come to Connecticut a few days before Heather. Maybe we could spend some time getting to know each other better. I'd like that, I replied sincerely. As the call wound down with awkward but not hostile goodbyes, I felt emotionally drained but cautiously optimistic. No miraculous healing had occurred, no dramatic reconciliation scene like in the movies. But small cracks had appeared in the facade of family perfection the Reynolds had maintained for so long, allowing glimpses of authenticity to shine through. When I closed my laptop, Brooke was standing in the kitchen doorway with 2 glasses of wine. "How'd it go?" she asked, handing me one. "Better than I expected, worse than I hoped," I replied honestly. "But it's a start. To new beginnings," she said, raising her glass. To honest conversations, I countered, clinking my glass against hers. The future of my relationship with my family remained uncertain, a work in progress rather than a problem solved. But for the first time in years, I felt like that relationship might evolve into something healthier, something based on who we really were, rather than the roles we'd been assigned. It wasn't everything, but it was enough for today. 2 months passed, bringing the first hints of summer to Colorado and gradual changes to my family dynamic. The shifts were subtle at first, easy to miss if you weren't looking for them. My mother began sending texts that went beyond polite inquiries about the weather, occasionally sharing photos of her garden or asking genuine questions about my latest photography projects. My father remained more distant, but his communications lost some of their judgmental edge, becoming more neutral, if not exactly warm. The most significant change came in the form of a cream-colored envelope that arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. Inside was a formal invitation to Kyle and Stephanie's wedding scheduled for September at a historic estate in Connecticut. Tucked behind the invitation was a handwritten note from both of them. "Heather, we would be honored to have you stand with us on our wedding day. No formal role necessary, unless you want one, but your presence matters to us. Could you come a week early to help with final preparations? Stephanie has some photography questions too. Love, Kyle and Stephanie." I traced my fingers over the words, noting how the handwriting shifted midway through Kyle's angular scrawl, giving way to Stephanie's rounder script. They had written it together, a small but meaningful gesture. That same evening, my phone rang with Stephanie's name on the screen, a new development in our emerging relationship. "I wanted to make sure you got the invitation," she said after we exchanged greetings, "and to tell you personally how much it would mean to have you here early." "I got it today," I confirmed. "Thank you for the note, it was really thoughtful." "I meant every word," she said warmly. "Look, Heather, I know family dynamics are complicated, and I'm not pretending one conversation fixed everything. But I want you to know that I've always admired how you've forged your own path. In my family, like in yours, there are very specific expectations about what success looks like, especially for women. Seeing you build a life around your passion is inspiring." Her words touched me deeply. "That means a lot, Stephanie. Thank you." "Kyle's been seeing someone," she continued, lowering her voice slightly. "A therapist, I mean. He won't admit it to your parents yet, but he's been working through some of his anxiety and the pressure he's felt all these years. Your conversation with him really sparked something." The news surprised me. In our family, therapy had always been viewed as something for weak people who couldn't handle their problems independently. Another example of my father's outdated perspectives. "That's really good to hear," I said sincerely. "How's he doing with it?" "It's early days, but I think it's helping. He's talking more about what he actually wants versus what he thinks he should want. It's like he's giving himself permission to question things for the first time." After that call, Stephanie and I began texting regularly. She sent photos of wedding venues and asked my genuine opinion on color schemes and floral arrangements. I shared images from my shoots, and she responded with thoughtful comments that went beyond generic compliments. A real friendship began to form independent of my complicated relationship with my brother. Inspired partly by Kyle's example, and partly by my own recognition that I needed support in navigating the changing family dynamics, I also started seeing a therapist, Dr. Levine specialized in family systems and helped me understand how the roles we play in our families of origin can become self-reinforcing traps. "You were assigned the role of the family rebel, the difficult one," she explained during one session. "Over time, that role became comfortable in its own way, even as it hurt you. Part of your journey now is deciding who you want to be in this evolving family system rather than simply reacting against the role you were given. Her insights helped me approach the upcoming wedding with more clarity and intention. I wanted to be present and authentic, without falling into old patterns of defensiveness or withdrawal when triggered by family dynamics. I wanted to support Kyle and Stephanie's relationship while maintaining my own boundaries. Most of all, I wanted to show up as the person I had become, not the troubled younger sister still seeking approval. A week before the wedding, I flew to Connecticut. The familiar landscape of my childhood stirred mixed emotions as I drove my rental car from the airport to my parents' home. I had arranged to stay there for 2 nights before moving to a hotel closer to the wedding venue, a compromise that acknowledged both the progress we'd made and the reality that too much togetherness might strain our fragile new understanding. Dinner that first night was a tense affair, my father, maintaining a formal politeness that kept genuine connection at bay. My mother tried harder, asking specific questions about my recent magazine assignment photographing extreme athletes in Utah. The effort was evident even if the interest wasn't entirely natural yet. "These are really quite good, Heather," my father said, surprising me by examining the portfolio I'd brought on my mother's request. "The composition in this one is particularly striking." It wasn't effusive praise, but coming from Harold Reynolds, it was practically a standing ovation. I accepted it with a simple thank you, resisting the urge to either dismiss the compliment or make a sarcastic comment about his sudden interest in my work. The real breakthrough came the following morning, when my mother asked if I'd join her for coffee in her garden. Sitting among her meticulously tended roses, she seemed smaller, somehow less the intimidating society matron and more, a woman in her 60s contemplating her life choices. "I've been thinking about what you said during our video call," she began, carefully stirring her coffee, "about feeling undervalued and excluded." I waited, giving her space to continue at her own pace. "I didn't set out to favor Kyle, you know," she said softly. "When you were little, before he was born, you were my whole world. I have albums full of photos from those years, every milestone documented, every drawing saved." This was news to me. In my memory, I had always been the afterthought, the child whose achievements merited a distracted nod rather than celebration. "What changed?" I asked. My mother sighed. "Your father had very specific ideas about success and achievement. When Kyle showed early aptitude for the things Harold valued, it was easy to pour energy into supporting that. And you were so different, so independent and creative. You seemed to need us less so. We focused more on Kyle." She looked up at me, her eyes clearer and more direct than I could remember seeing them in years. "It wasn't fair to you, and I'm sorry for that." The simple acknowledgement, delivered without excuses or qualifications, was more healing than I had anticipated. Not a Hollywood moment of tearful reconciliation, but a quiet step toward honest recognition of past hurts. "Thank you for saying that," I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. "It means a lot to hear you acknowledge it." 2 days later, I moved to the hotel where Kyle and Stephanie were staying, along with most of the wedding party. The week that followed was a whirlwind of last-minute preparations, family gatherings, and getting to know Stephanie's extended clan. There were still moments of tension, instances where old family dynamics threatened to reassert themselves, but each time I found I had more tools to navigate those challenges without being pulled back into outdated roles. The day before the wedding, Kyle asked me to join him for a walk around the estate grounds. As we strolled beneath ancient oak trees, he seemed nervous, repeatedly adjusting his watch and clearing his throat. "I have something to ask you," he finally said, stopping beside a small ornamental pond. "Would you consider taking some informal photos tomorrow? Not as the official photographer, we have someone for that, but just your perspective on the day. The moments between moments that someone who knows the family might notice." The request touched me deeply. It wasn't just about my photography skills, but an acknowledgement that my perspective, my way of seeing the world, had unique value. I'd be honored, I told him sincerely. He nodded, looking relieved. There's something else. I've been working through some stuff in therapy, trying to understand the dynamics that shaped us both. He met my eyes directly. I want you to know that I see now how different our experiences in the same family were, how I benefited from attention and expectations that burdened you. I'm sorry for the times I took that for granted or added to your sense of exclusion. Standing there in the golden afternoon light, I saw my brother clearly, not as the golden child who had everything handed to him, but as a complex person who had struggled within his own gilded cage. For the first time since we were very young children, I felt a genuine connection with Kyle, a bridge across the chasm that had separated us for so long. We were both doing the best we could with the roles we were given, I said gently. I'm just glad we're finding a way to choose different roles now. The wedding day dawned clear and perfect, the kind of early September day that photographers dream about. I spent the morning with Stephanie and her bridesmaids, capturing candid moments with my camera as they prepared. My mother stopped by briefly, and I caught a beautiful shot of her helping Stephanie with her necklace. Both women reflected in the antique mirror, 4 generations of jewelry connecting past to present. During the ceremony, I divided my attention between my role as a sister and my promised photography, finding unique angles and intimate moments that the official photographer focused on formal shots might miss. I caught my father's fleeting expression of vulnerability as Kyle recited his vows, a side of Harold Reynolds I had rarely glimpsed. I captured Stephanie's young niece gazing up at the bride with unabashed adoration. And most precious of all, I documented the moment Kyle looked out into the congregation and found my eyes a small nod passing between us that acknowledged all we had begun to understand about each other. At the reception, I moved between social groups with my camera as a gentle buffer, finding it easier to navigate potentially awkward family interactions with a professional purpose. When I wasn't photographing, I found myself drawn into conversations with Stephanie's relatives, who seemed genuinely interested in my life and work, without the weight of family history coloring their perceptions. Late in the evening, as the celebration was winding down, my father approached me at the bar where I was ordering a glass of water after hours of photography. Your mother showed me some of the pictures you've been taking today, he said, his voice carrying its usual formality but with an unfamiliar note of hesitation. You have a genuine talent, Heather. I can see why your work is being recognized professionally. Coming from my father, this was unprecedented praise. I resisted the reflexive urge to downplay it or respond defensively. Thank you, Dad. That means a lot. He nodded, looking momentarily uncomfortable, then added, Your brother and Stephanie value your perspective. I'm beginning to understand why. It wasn't an apology or a complete acknowledgement of past hurts, but from Harold Reynolds it represented significant movement. As he walked away to rejoin my mother, I felt a complex mix of emotions, the lingering pain of the past, tempered by cautious hope for a different future. 2 weeks after returning to Colorado, I began a new photography project, one that had been taking shape in my mind since the wedding. Titled Family Systems, it explored the complex dynamics of different families through environmental portraiture, capturing the subtle interactions, spatial relationships, and unspoken communications that defined each unique family system. The first subjects were Brooke and her boisterous, loving Italian-American family during their annual reunion. Next came Jason and his more reserved New England clan, where affection was expressed through acts of service rather than demonstrative emotion. With each family I photographed, I gained new insights into the infinite variations of human connection, the ways love and hurt could be so deeply intertwined, the possibility of growth and change, even within established patterns. I sent regular updates on the project to Kyle and Stephanie, who responded with enthusiastic support. My mother asked thoughtful questions about my approach. My father remained more distant, but acknowledged the early exhibition interest the project was generating. 6 months after the wedding, as I reviewed the growing collection of images in my studio, I realized that I hadn't yet included my own family in the project. The thought of asking them to participate was both intimidating and compelling. It would require vulnerability from all of us, a willingness to be seen as we really were, imperfect and evolving. After considerable thought, I sent an email proposing the idea, expecting resistance, or at least hesitation. To my surprise, all of them agreed, even my father. We arranged for a weekend in the spring when I would return to Connecticut, not for a formal occasion or family obligation, but specifically to create art together, to document our complicated, imperfect family system as it really was. As I booked the flight, I reflected on the unexpected journey of the past year. It had begun with exclusion and heard a ski photo posted in a moment of defiance. It had evolved through confrontation and truth-telling, difficult conversations, and small moments of connection. It was continuing now with tentative steps toward a new kind of relationship, one based on seeing each other more clearly and choosing honesty over comfortable illusions. The healing wasn't complete, and perhaps it never would be entirely. Some hurts run too deep to disappear without a trace. But I had learned that healing doesn't require perfect relationships or fairy tale reconciliations. It requires honesty, even when that honesty is uncomfortable. It requires the courage to stand in your truth while remaining open to the perspectives of others. Most of all, it requires the willingness to grow beyond the roles we've been assigned and choose who we want to be in relationship to those who share our history. Standing up for myself had been just the beginning. The real journey was learning to stay present and authentic while allowing others the space to change too. It wasn't always easy, but as I looked at the family photographs spread across my desk, I knew it was worth every difficult moment. Has your family ever excluded you from an important event? How did you handle it? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey of family healing resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more stories about navigating complex relationships. Thank you for sharing this path with me. And remember that even the most difficult family dynamics can change when we find the courage to be honest about our experiences.